watching Shalom TV, celebrating Jewish culture. Funding for Shalom TV has been provided by the following, and by viewers like you.
Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I have this great privilege right now of sitting in the offices of the Elie Wiesel Foundation for Humanity to sit with someone you well know, not only because he sat with me many times, but because you've seen him everywhere. He is this extraordinary author, novelist, writer, Nobel Peace recipient, Nobel Laureate. He is in many ways the individual who has taught us what it means to live after the night, after the Shoah. And he is this indomitable voice of conscience that speaks out wherever he sees human injustice of any other human being. It's an honor again to sit with Elie Wiesel. Thank you so much for letting me come by. First of all, Elie, you had lunch with the president. You know, before you even went to Washington for the White House for that lunch, everybody was talking about it. I received phone calls, I received emails. Mark, do you know Elie Wiesel is going to be sitting with the President of the United States for lunch? He's asked him to come down to Washington. So I called you and said, would you mind my dropping by just to talk about that in the context of all the things that's been going on and the way in which the media has been portraying a very difficult relationship between the American administration and the Netanyahu government. But let's take it step by step. On April 16th, Elie Wiesel published in the New York Times, actually it was a couple days later, but it appeared in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times, and the International Herald Tribune, what I call an ode to Jerusalem, a Jew's heartfelt poem to Jerusalem. And I want to read one paragraph, and then I want you to tell us what moved you to actually go out of your way to have published in this multiplicity of papers your writing about Jerusalem. But here is one paragraph. There is no more moving prayer in Jewish history than the one expressing our yearning to return to Jerusalem. To many theologians, it is Jewish history. To many poets, a source of inspiration. It belongs to the Jewish people and is much more than a city. It is what binds one Jew to another in a way that remains hard to explain. When a Jew visits Jerusalem for the first time, it is not the first time. It's a homecoming. The first song I heard was my mother's lullaby about and for Jerusalem. Its sadness and its joy are part of our collective memory. First of all, so beautiful. The Jewish people thank you for this. Okay, so why does Elie Wiesel want to write publicly about Jerusalem at this point in time?
First of all, it was interpreted by some people as a letter to the president or a letter against the president.
Exactly. Everybody said Elie Wiesel is writing to Obama.
Not so.
Not so.
If I want to write a letter to the president, I know his address. I know how to write a letter that he would receive. No, I really felt simply that the time has come for me, as you said, to sing for Jerusalem. The man who wrote, the author who wrote A Beggar in Jerusalem, felt the need to write something else about and for Jerusalem. Why? I was in Israel for Passover, for Pesach, and I saw the Prime Minister. He had nothing to do with this ad. Simply, I heard around me journalists saying that the fear is that the American administration now, who want so much to bring peace in the area, will begin with Jerusalem, thinking, by the way, thinking that once they settle the problem of Jerusalem, everything else will be so minor, it's going to be easy. And that's what moved me. I said, no, just the opposite. Just the opposite. It's not like that. If they start with Jerusalem, they will never make one step forward, because this is the most difficult, the most complex, the most emotional problem that faces both sides. And therefore I wrote it. And I was praised by some, and criticized by others, which is normal. I don't leave people indifferent.
You're saying that you wanted to explain to whom that they should not put Jerusalem first, but keep it to the last. Whom did you really want to reach?
Everybody. I wrote it for the American people. I want the American people to know, those of them who read my books, who were my students in one way or another, they should really know what I feel. I feel peace is necessary and unavoidable. There must be peace. And the best way to attain that peace is to leave Jerusalem to the end.
Are you hoping, though, that in some way, if the American people hear you and understand you, that they will encourage their own representatives, not necessarily the president, but ultimately our government as a whole, to have that kind of orientation in any peace process that the United States might shepherd?
I think it already happened.
Mm-hmm.
Very rarely is it that my words carry weight. In this case, the reaction was immediate. The administration has already decided to leave it to the end, which is good.
It is good, and it's not the first time your words have had impact. Okay, so after you write this letter, you get an invitation from the president himself. And the last time we were together, we talked about your accompanying him in commemoration of the Shoah and your liberation. And you accompanied him to Buchenwald. And you talked to me then about how when he turned to you at the last moment and said, Elie, the last word should be yours. And you described how it took you by surprise. And then you said the eloquent words you said. We know you have a relationship with the president. You've already said if you want to get a letter to the president, you know how.
Yeah.
But still, something drove him to say to himself or his people around him, you know, after this letter appeared, you ought to sit with Elie Wiesel. Now, and I'm thinking as I'm coming up the elevator to your office, Elie, what do I have a right to ask you to tell me?
Mm-hmm.
Because on the one hand, this is a private meeting between you and the president. On the other hand, it's not private. And this was done in front of the entire world. Can you tell us the extent to which it's possible, A, the tone of the meeting and the content of the meeting?
Mark, first of all, we have been friends for so many years, and therefore you may ask. That's why I accepted the only program I accepted to participate in on that subject is with you.
I thank you so much.
I said no to all the others. Look, it isn't happening. The chronology is wrong.
Please.
I saw the president in February, I think. He gave me the National Medal of the Humanities. And at that time he said, look, we need to have lunch together. I was going to have lunch with you today, but because of the scheduling program with the Republican congressmen and senators about healthcare, we had to postpone it for some time. So therefore, and it came before the letter. Nothing to do with the letter.
Nothing to do?
Nothing to do with the letter, no.
Or the controversy over Jerusalem?
Nothing to do with the letter, absolutely not. It simply happened. He wanted to have lunch with me, and I said, of course, yes. In the meantime, the letter appeared, and it's true, of course, when I came to Washington, everybody read it. And I was afraid that they would also interpret it the way some papers did, saying that it's again, not at all. They understood right away that this is not my style. I don't do that. Mm-hmm. It was really a kind of shir hashirim, of a song for Jerusalem, and I wanted to know, that's why I wrote a lyrical text. Yes. Some things, of course, provoked controversy, and one of them actually, I'm afraid, there's something there. When I said that Muslims and Jews and Christians have the same right to build, I think I should have said own. They have the same right to own any place in Jerusalem. But building there were all kinds of problems there, I hear. But otherwise, it was simply, literally, that a song of hope for Jerusalem, a song of peace for Jerusalem, a song for Jerusalem in peace with everybody.
When you sit with the president, are you able to express some of your feelings about your experiences vis-a-vis Palestinian-Israeli relations and the peace process and Jerusalem? Is that part of what you were able to discuss with him?
I was able, look, he's not the first president I know. This is the sixth president that I was with everyone in the White House and so Oval Office and so forth. I can tell you only that this 1 hour kosher luncheon, which was very nice of them too, they know I eat kosher, and therefore it was very sensitive. Look, the man is a very sensitive man. But I told you the story about Buchenwald simply to show his sensitivity. The entire encounter was substance, no small talk, nothing at all. Everything had meaning, everything had content, everything had substance. And we spoke about Jewish history, and we spoke about Israel, the future and the past of Israel, and we spoke about what I feel personally about all of these problems. Being an American Jew, proud of being an American Jew. I'm an American, not an Israeli. But it was really an exchange between two friends. I don't say we agreed on everything, but nevertheless, the honesty, the integrity on both sides was evident.
What would you say to Jews who are writing and speaking these days, worried that the president has distanced America, or certainly the American administration, the White House, from Israel, and who claim that President Obama has changed the way in which the United States deals with Israel vis-a-vis the entire Muslim and Arab world?
Mark, I know many presidents, many, that means many, more than one, who had critical moments. Mm-hmm. There were crises between America and Israel. He was not the first one. Look, again, he has his own policy. I hope that I influenced maybe something in him about that policy. I hope so. I'm not sure, but I hope so. But it's not like that, really. There is no real distanciation. There were tensions. Because the problems, again, there were different problems over which America and Israel on the highest level disagreed. There were tensions. At least one thing is clear, that now the problems exist, but the tensions were gone.
JTA, by the way, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, ran a story after your lunch as if you were saying that now that I've met with the president, things have been resolved and tensions have been over. In a sense, that was a bit of a distortion, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. The problems, really, anyone who thinks that I could solve these problems just in 1 hour, no. I'm still not the prophet Elijah.
J Street decided to pay itself to run the response of Yossi Sarid, who is an Israeli journalist on the left, a commentator. And when you talk about the response, there were many people who have both praised and in some way gone after you a little bit for again, when I call a poem, you call your ode to Jerusalem, your shir to Jerusalem. But one of the things that he wrote in his piece was this paragraph, and I just want your thought. He said, "The fact is and always will be, this city, Jerusalem, is holy to everyone. Such is its blessing and its curse. Let's allow President Obama to use his clout to save us," meaning the Israelis, "from ourselves, to help both bruised and battered nations and free them from their prison. Then can he push both sides to divide the city into two capitals, to give Jews areas to the Jews and Arab areas to the Arabs, and assign the Holy Basin to an agreed-on international authority." And in your piece, you tried to establish the extent to which there is a Jewish connection to Jerusalem, which in fact is unique. When you hear somebody suggest that the city belongs to other people as well, that other people have a serious spiritual connection to it, and that in the end, Israelis need to be pushed by America to do what is in Israel's best interest because Israel isn't doing it themselves. What is your reaction?
I don't know Yossi Sarit. I read his article in the Haaretz, and then I was told it also in the Jewish Week. Look, he has the right to say his mind, absolutely, and I respect everybody who disagrees with me. I don't like it occasionally, but I don't disagree. I don't really disregard their right to disagree. He says that others also have spiritual. Of course they are. Look, I don't deny that. I'm not blind. But one thing is clear: Christianity has Rome. Muslims have Mecca. We have Jerusalem. When Sadat came to Jerusalem, the great historic moment which brought pride and joy to all of us in the world, Jews and non-Jews, when he prayed in Al-Aqsa, he turned to Mecca. That means because Jerusalem for them is number 3 among the holy places, but it's still holy to them. And the same thing, although Rome is the eternal city of Christianity, they call it, they still, of course, they have their holy places in Jerusalem. But only Israel, only the Jewish people really have Jerusalem as the only holy city in their collective memory. So it's different. What to do with it later on, when the time will come after a generation of peace between Israel and the Palestinians, then I'll let them decide. If Yossi Sarit becomes prime minister, I'm sure he will do whatever he wants. But he has the right to disagree with me. They all have the right to disagree with me.
I'm asking substantively. Forget who. When you hear anybody suggest that the United States and the Obama administration should push Israel in a certain direction, do you have any reaction of your own?
I cannot do that. I cannot push Israel. Who am I to push Israel? If I want to push Israel, I could go there, stay there, and become a journalist, maybe run for parliament, who knows? And then push. I am not a pusher. No, when it comes to Israel, really, I listen, I observe, I'm involved very, very much. But the last thing in the world I would do is to push Israel.
Would you want America to push Israel?
Let America decide. Then there's going to be a free debate on that, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. We live in a democracy, in a great democracy. Every president that in my time that I have known, at one point, how do they push? They don't say we are going to push you. They come out with ideas, they come out with proposals, and they all have done that. All. Ford spoke about reassessment, Ford and Kissinger at that time at one point. During Bush father, we had problems with James Baker. They're all trying to push. They call it something else, but it's pushing. But never Israel knows how to. My advice to some friends in Washington has always been is, Israel knows how to resist pressure. It doesn't know how to resist seduction.
Seduction. Alan Dershowitz said to me, the last thing Jews should want to do in America is make Obama the enemy, that he's not an enemy. You agree?
Oh, I fully agree. He is not an enemy, absolutely not. And those who do treat him like that are wrong and dangerous. He is not an enemy of Israel, of course not.
It's a very difficult question to ask anybody who loves Jerusalem. And I've asked Israelis, Elie, if you could be 100% sure that there would be peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis, would it be okay for you if a piece of East Jerusalem was given to the new Palestinian state as their capital?
First of all, I'm convinced that there will be peace between Israel and the Palestinians.
You are convinced?
It cannot continue like that in the long. What I said in my statement, in my song, so to speak, that first of all, again, sit down, solve this other minor problems, all that are minor compared to Jerusalem, and then both sides will be mature enough to deal with Jerusalem as well. At that time, again, Israel will have to decide. Whatever Israel will do, I will accept. Absolutely.
You will accept?
Whatever Israel does, I accept.
One last question. So I'm listening to your appearance, which you again were kind enough to invite us to, where you appeared before the New York Press Club. And you tell the story about how you and your wife Marion, who heads your foundation here, sponsored the first event in Jordan where the president of the Palestinian Authority actually met with an Israeli prime minister. It was Ehud Olmert at the time. And I want you to describe again, you were witness.
We organized it.
Yes, and you were there, though, when the two of them met for the first time.
Absolutely.
What was it like?
We were there, King Abdullah II of Jordan, myself, my wife, and a few others who are part of the organizing group for this conference of Nobel laureates in Petra. And we invited, I arranged all that. I to Olmert to come and meet Abbas for the first time. And when they met, they fell into each other's arms in our presence. And they wept like children.
Really?
And we too had tears in our eyes. And at that moment I turned to my wife and said, you see, first of all, it was worth it. What we are doing, it's worth it.
All the effort was worth it.
Yes, and now I believe, I'm convinced now that peace is possible.
Then why doesn't Abbas sit with Netanyahu today?
I have no idea. What do I know?
You have no instinct here, no sense?
Oh, who knows, maybe their personal relations are different. I don't. They will sit together. They will come to it. They will sit together.
And you're not worried that there are so many pressures on Abbas that even if he wants to sit, the reality of Palestinian life will prevent, at this point in history, some kind of peace negotiation. And I'm telling you, Elie, that's what I fear. I am convinced that there are Palestinians who really are ready to finally say, we will share the land. And that's what it's about. It's not that we really want Jaffa and Tel Aviv and Haifa. No, we will share the land. I believe there's some Palestinians who say that. What I worry about, Elie, is that the people who have to make that decision, who have the power to make the decision, either because they don't want to on some level, or because they're frightened of what will happen to them from other extremists, they're not willing to do what a Sadat was willing to do, and work it out behind the scenes first. You know, and you know far better than I. There was a lot that went on before he got on a plane to come to Jerusalem. A lot was worked out between Begin government and the Sadat government. So something has to be worked out that you and I don't, you may see because you talk to people, but the public will not see what's really going on. We were told Israel will never negotiate with the PLO while Dayan is meeting with the PLO. That's the way diplomacy works. It works behind the scenes before it goes public. And I'm simply worried that even if there are people now in the Palestinian world who are ready to share the land forever, they do not either represent enough power or they are frightened by people who do have power to do what's necessary. And therefore, from my perspective, that's why I remain less optimistic than you about the prospects for peace. So I ask just what your reaction to that is.
One thing I like about Mark, about our conversation between two Jews, that you have asked the last question 4 times already. Which might was the last. Look.
Well, answer it one more time for me.
Look. Number one. Abbas's problem is not Israel. Abbas's problem is other Palestinians, the Hamas. If Abbas would go to Gaza tomorrow, he would not return alive. So the enemy that Israel has named Gaza is also the enemy of Abbas. But therefore, what I believe is possible, of course, that Abbas and Netanyahu, let's say, would meet and say, we share, what do we share the land, the West Bank. Naturally, nothing on that side. On the West Bank, we share what used to be a biblical entity maybe, and say, okay, we will construct here and build here our own nation and our own society and live in peace, at least for one generation, and see what we can do further on, and then build about Jerusalem. It is possible. He has no choice. Abbas will survive Gaza thanks to Israel. Israel will protect him. So what you say is a danger, yes, but it can overcome. And then all of a sudden, all this possible situations around that situation will change. And there will be really peace between those two entities, Palestine and Israel. And it will happen.
So this is my suggestion to you. Somehow you find the strength for you and your wife to have one more meeting somewhere in the Middle East. You bring them together, because if anybody could do it, with your heart and your mind, Elie Wiesel, you could do it. And I appreciate so much the wisdom you share. I appreciate the sentiment, the attitude. And when I'm with you, I believe in miracles, Elie. And thank you for, again,
Let me just make you a promise. When we do that, I invite you to come and have a program on that.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you, thank you. Elie Wiesel, as always, if you have any thoughts or comments, please share them with me. If you'd like to be in touch with Dr. Elie Wiesel, you can always do so by emailing me, and I will forward your emails on to him. I look forward to hearing from many of you this week. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.